made our lives hell for over a month. I don't have the great writing skill set of my friend, but I give this my best shot. First, a little background on me. I've been with 035 None since we both hit the fleet, and I'm one of the highly intelligent, rock-eating, simple-to-maintain machine gunners. No, I'm not the one who found the doll, but someone in my team did. Now, myself and a small group of us made a pact that once we were back in the States, we'd let this die and not bring up names or pictures. I'm gonna break a few of those promises now. The man that found the doll, we'll call him Ronnie because I'm not dumb enough to use real names, he picks up this doll near the end of our break off patrol, in the middle of the bush. As aforementioned, we are super highly intelligent, and even a cool rock can keep us detached for hours, so this doll was definitely an upgrade. He passed her around the squad, and we each take turns looking at the black eyes and the weird-looking grin on his face. Somebody said it was like a flower in the middle of the bush, so somehow the name Daisy got thrown around. It was blatantly obvious that this thing was creepy, and that only meant one thing to the machine gunners. Fucking with one of the scared mortarmen. We'll call him Taxi, which is one of the favorite pastimes of the platoons. He was literally freaking out by the simplest things. I once saw him jump up and down and run 10 feet away because he saw a moth. So needless to say, he was struggling in Darwin as it was. After we got our fill of making him miserable, we all fell asleep until it was time to finish the patrol later that afternoon. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the same details of the hike and how miserable we all were when we were wandering around for hours, because everyone knows you can't spell lost without LT. One thing I will say that 035 None left out was the fog. It came out of nowhere. It made it hard to see and to breathe. It was almost as if that Stephen King's book, The Mist, had come to life. The creepiest part is that almost immediately after this, the lieutenant found Daisy in his pack, and I rushed to grab it. If you want to get rid of it right, you have to do it yourself. When the fire broke out, I wasn't going to take any more chances. I saw the flames creeping up and set the doll on a log that had already caught fire. This doll needed to die. When we stepped on the C-53, we all felt a slight breath of relief. We were done with the field and had a couple of weeks back in the rear before we went back out. Also, we had a bunch of Great Northern and VB waiting for us in our rooms. No one was making it through the night without being plastered. And to commemorate the weird experience, we of course watched the movie Annabelle before going to our rooms and passing out.
I always like
to give a rundown of how our rooms were set up, we had a building with about 7 rooms in it, and each of us somehow managed to get our own rooms. We had my machine gun squad of 5 guys, Ronnie included, Taxi, and 035 None. We were an odd bunch, but we made it work. Best of all, our building was at least 2 kilometers away from the rest of our company. We were literally alone. And afraid. The next morning, we all woke up to the sound of Taxi screaming his head off. One by one, we went into his room, and we all froze up. Sitting on his nightstand, next to his bed, was Daisy. Except she wasn't burned at all. In fact, she had a little yellow dress on, and her mouth wasn't in a grin anymore. It was a frown, almost as if she was scolding us. Taxi kept asking us about the doll in his room, and none of us admitted to it. The rational part of me wanted to believe that one of the guys in my squad was a sick and sadistic fuck, and messing with him on a whole new level. But no one fessed up. We didn't have time to think about it too much, though, before we got dressed and went into formation. On the way out, Ronnie took the doll and threw it on the ground and stomped on it. One of the arms broke off, and he kicked it into a storm drain and left the doll in the road. After formation, we walked back to our rooms and grabbed our gear. We were going to work on clearing houses, and we assumed that we were going to be using some of the barrack buildings, but we had to meet up in an hour with the electrical turns. While we were walking back, we noticed that Daisy wasn't there. We all started validating it somehow. Things like that when the Aussies came by and picked it up. Or a bird or an officer came by and took it out of the road. We are on the road that leads to the gym. And as we walked back to our rooms, the nightmares came to fruition. I heard Ronnie yell for me. I walked in assuming that I had a question on the group thread, but no. Daisy was sitting on his bed. Not only had a pissed off look on her face, both arms had a red dress. She was pointing right off the sliding glass door. I composed myself just long enough to see what she was pointing at. It looked like a town on the other side of the knee-high wooden fence. We were told by the Aussies that it was just an old barracks that weren't being used anymore, at least when we got to the base a couple months prior. We left Daisy where she was, and we ran back up to meet with our rifle brethren. Then we began to walk, right through the old town behind our barracks room. Emotions raged through all of us, a mixture of anger and fear. Why did this guy start to torment us, and why will it not, well, die? As we got closer to the town, I started observing it more and more. It looked like it had been deserted, not moved out of. Cars were broken down in the streets, and trees' limbs were blocking roads and sidewalks. What was even weirder were the buildings. They were all on stilts. Single-story houses that were 10 feet up in the air. Underneath was a concrete slab. We went throughout the day and nothing weird happened except we passed a bunch of no trespassing asbestos area signs. Presumably the reason the Aussies moved out. But when the sun started to set, we were getting a couple of night raids in. I was the lucky son of a bitch who had to sit in an abandoned, asbestos-ridden, and creepy house pretending to be the enemy, while the platoon patrolled from about a kilometer away to get to the house. The sergeant had already told me to just lay down in the room at the end of the hall and wait for them to breach.
It was a good try, though.
So, to give the general layout of the house, there was one door in and one door out.
But it was a good try.
Walk in the door and look to the left, there's a giant living room. To your 2 o'clock is a small kitchen with an island countertop.
He shot the shit out of us.
Nowhere to hide is what I'm trying to say. Look to your immediate right, and there's a long hallway. There are 2 doors on the left.
But we'll get that flag.
One being a bedroom and the other being a bathroom.
We'll get that
2
shit.
doors on the right, one being a bedroom and one being a coat closet. And at the end of the hall is a door with a full-size mirror on the wall, perfectly positioned to scare the piss out of anyone. Especially at night when you're looking for people and you have your rifle flashlight on, and it's like someone with the same rifle as you is about to shoot you at the end of the hall. Naturally, I chose the room at the end of the hall for this factor. So I set myself up inside the closet at the end of the hall, leaving just enough room to see anybody coming into the room, but not enough to be obvious that I'm hiding.
Do it. I see a rockin' hard,
the enemy,
baby.
you know? Tough,
You're
realistic.
rockin' hard. I need a driver. I need a driver.
I wait about 10 to 15 minutes, and I must have dozed off, because the next thing I know is hearing the door bust open to the house. A rush of people yelling, U.S. Marines, and left, right, clear. They eventually make it to my room and kick in the door. 3 flow in, and look confused. Instead of the normal room clear or press from them shooting me through the opening that my rifle still have, that'd make it a little easier, and I was just making fun of it. I'm hiding definitely, I'd be super obvious. I hear, what the fuck? And see one of them drop their rifles. I jump out the closet and kill them, but then I see what their lights were shining on. I threw up. Sitting against the wall with his Daisy, finger pointing right at the closet. That wasn't the worst part, though. Above the doll with the words, he's in there. I fell down and slumped against the wall. The Marine immediate gets on one knee next to me and screams, "Kermit up!" I looked down and noticed my desert blouse was soaked in blood.
Got him
The
now.
doll used my blood without me knowing. Sorry if this post is short and not as detailed, but I can't help thinking that telling the whole story right now is a bad idea. Not yet. I looked at dazed in the back of the Humvee. It was the middle of the day and the AC was still broke. Whatever weird, crazy dream I was having was gone, and I was still in the hell known as 29 Palms. We weren't going fast enough to make the heat go anywhere, but I still kept my head close to the window and stared off mindlessly. Our self-chosen metallic prison hurled itself further and further into the desert, kicking up dust as it went. "Hey, look up ahead on our right, there's someone walking," said Gomez, who was in the back seat with me. He slowed down. A lone figure stumbled slowly forward with their head downwards. Details emerged as I realized it was a man. I've heard stories about random scavengers and drugged-out Romans, but I didn't think they were ever true. Pretty soon, he stopped moving and simply stared at us as we passed. He had short, mangy grey hair and wrinkled, leathery skin. Somewhere in the depths of his dark eye sockets, there might have been eyes, but I didn't see them. He wore some ragged black shirt and old shorts. All he did was stare at us until we passed, without emotion or gesture. A few guys joked around, but I think we were all a bit nervous of who the hell this was. After another hour or so, we arrived at our destination and began to set up a complex defense on a flat piece of land. By the time 2 a.m. came around, we had finished building our defense perimeter. Machine guns and mortars were being dug in, and we had tanks to our flanks. I thought for a second. No one is ever taking our flat piece of land. Just as I thought that, the wind picked up and blew sand into my face. I took the first hour of watch whilst the other 2 guys slept for that. There probably wasn't going to be anyone attacking us tonight. With good habits win wars, or something. After an hour of being blasted by sand, I emerged from my hole to wake the next guy up. I found one guy, but I didn't see the other. He was probably behind a rock or dune or something. I woke up the one guy I saw, and he grudgingly put his gear on. He probably knows where the other guy is. I got inside my sleeping bag and fell asleep instantly. Pretty soon, someone was shaking me awake. I checked my watch and realized I'd only slept for an hour. What the hell do you think you're waking me up for? Go wake up Gomez. I can't fucking find him. I've been looking for 10 minutes. He's not here. Fucking boot. I get out my sleeping bag and begin getting dressed. Gomez couldn't have gone very far. We spent about 5 minutes checking the surrounding dunes and sand for him and came up with nothing. I checked his bag and his sleeping bag was definitely gone. So he was somewhere. Pretty soon, everyone was awake and we were in one big line combing the desert for this guy in the early morning light. We'd gone about a kilometer from our original spot, and people began to just believe he ran away at this point.
And I got right back in the truck.
We went a little farther where there was a small mountainside, and we grudgingly climbed. When we got to the top, people jokingly checked under each and every rock. "Gomez, you under here?" As some Lance Corporal lifted up a small boulder. He wasn't under any of them. As we were coming down the other side of it, we noticed that there was a small opening in one of the rock faces that resembled a very old mine shaft entrance. Most of the old mines had been barred up, but this one wasn't for some reason. We made a quick decision that a handful of us would quickly check the place out, while the other Marines headed back. Just to be sure, right? I was the first one in. It was definitely a very old mine shaft. Whatever wood was used was rotting to dust. That gave me anxiety, but we crept forward slowly with our lights as bright as possible. As I creeped farther and farther into the cave, I noticed it was a lot cooler inside, which was nice, but it gave me a strange vibe. Eventually we came to a split-end cave. 2 of us went left and 2 of us went right. Typical horror story situation, yeah? I ended up going right and was quickly disappointed with a dead end maybe 15 meters in. As I was heading back, I heard some cursing and people struggling on the left side of the cave. One Marine was on the ground, unconscious, and Gomez, our Houdini of a Marine, was on top of the other guy. He was in full primal fight-or-flight mode. I got there just in time as Gomez picked up a rock to smash the other guy's head in. He just wouldn't snap out of it. Not the Gomez we knew anymore. It took 3 of us an exhaustingly long time to finally choke him out. We caught our breath for a minute before we slowly dragged him and our other unconscious friend out. When we started to see the entrance of the cave, I saw the ragged, weathered, and dark figure I saw on the road earlier.
It's too late.
I woke up dazed in the back of a Humvee. It was the middle of the day and the AC was still broke. Whatever weird, crazy dream I was having was gone, and I was still in the hell known as 29 Palms. We weren't going fast enough to make the heat go anywhere, but I still kept my head close to the window and stared off mindlessly. Our self-chosen metallic prison hurled itself farther and farther into the desert, kicking up dust as it went.
That was, you know, your mic plugged in.
I looked to my left, and there was an empty seat. Confused, I asked, "Where did Gomez go?" "Who the fuck's Gomez?"
One minute remaining.
I'd first met the soul-destroying hills of Camp Pendleton, California, in the middle of July after some troubling days in the desert. If you've never heard of the place, that's good, because it's pretty much just a bunch of trees, poison oak, and never-ending hills. You start to grow a very specific hatred for gravity if your main mode of transportation is feet. Imagine climbing a massive hill, just to realize that you have to go all the way down and climb up an even bigger hill on all fours this time, and then some more after that. I suppose that's a lot like my life outside the field lately. This recent encounter with weird stuff happened just recently, so the impression left on me is still pretty fresh. I've been in the field so much that I haven't had much time or desire to reflect upon the past. This was actually my first time in Camp Pendleton, and it was our last field out before deployment. So our command really went all out on this one to grind us down. The first few days consisted of some pretty good training, extremely realistic with actors and stuff like that. Can't say too much, but I can complain. Long days in humid heat, never enough sleep. After all that business, we moved to a different location after that. I won't name it specifically, but it was an area that people do not use to train anymore. Perhaps it was because of all the overgrowth and inaccessible terrain that made it very hard to get resupplied on water and food. The first day, we were sent off into the hills to go beat the enemy for another 2 platoons. One platoon was defending the base, and one was out looking for us. The day we hiked out there, in the middle of nowhere, was particularly hot. All the water we had was on our backs, and most of us ran out by the time we got there. Spent the afternoon hiding in the shade from both the enemy patrols and the deadly sun. We got a water resupply before the sun set, and I felt a little better. When the last bit of light vanished from the horizon, myself and a few guys climbed up on a huge hillside, on all fours with some nifty thermal optics and a ton of batteries. Our job was to observe the valley beneath us and make sure no one would sneak up from the rest of the platoon. We took turns observing and sleeping, so it wasn't all that bad. I had the first hour and didn't see anything but some rabbits and a few deer. I was up, so I handed them off to the next guy and found a nice rock to rest my head on. I was just about to fall asleep when I heard the well-known "what the fuck" from the guy scanning the valley. I tried to ignore it and get some well-needed sleep, just like in real life, but he came over to wake me up a minute later. "Hey, dude, come check this out."
Party with your moms at my
My response was something like,
your moms at my place.
"Fuck off, I'm trying to sleep." "No, seriously, look at it. It's something crawling or some shit." With an annoyed sigh, I sat up and crawled over to our spot. My friend handed me the thermals, and I looked around dumbly for a few seconds as he talked me on. "Okay, look below those 2 trees that look like a middle finger. Yeah, it's right next to the bush shaped like a dog smoking a cigarette. We're really good at this, okay?" I found what I was looking at. White figure contrasted on a background of grey and black. Could have been a rabbit, so I zoomed in. Expensive optics, remember? And sure enough, it looked like some weirdly shaped person pulling himself forward with his arms.